my grandfather his name was Frederick Skirmahorn Thayer. And that was typical of my mother. She said, Craig, now, the first boy, I wish you would put in Skirmahorn. Craig didn't think anything of that, so he had 5 girls. But, yeah, and Skirmahorn, they came into, to best of my knowledge, they came into New York, and that's where all of the Thayers, and from there they dispersed and came to Orange County and went back to New York. I often wonder why my grandfather came to Orange County and got a wife and went back to New York. All the women in New York, and he came. But that's he and his father had a meat packing company in Seneca Falls, New York.
Do you remember your grandparents?
Oh my goodness, I lived with them. I was raised with them.
Here in New York, or here or in New York?
Rhodesville. They came over to New York. My mother was born in 1901 in New York. And I had 3, they came south. They gave up a meat packing company. That was about during the war, you know. And that's one thing that everybody ought to know. If you don't find it out now, it's gone. You know, it's gone. And I didn't. Who cares about genealogy when I was growing up? I was chasing girls. So then you have to get to the point that you got to back up. And that's difficult. If I hadn't had help from ladies in Pennsylvania, you know, that belonged to the Thayer Foundation, I never would have gotten it. But it's important now to me and any adult to know who you are, where you came from. Right. I think. Right. Don't everybody want to fool with that though, but when I don't have anything to do, I sit down and I read what I've already written.
So you came to Rhodesville at age 3?
My mother did.
Oh,
my mother did.
Sorry.
And she had 3 brothers and a sister, and they bought a farm. And he was a truck farmer. I mean, he was a genius at truck farming. And we had orchards, and this, you know, it was a survival in Rhodesville, and we had a big time. In fact, the matter is, I told Ray, his boy died here last night, a man. I remember him being born, and then we sold the farm to his father. So lived right across the road from him. A small world.
So your father was the truck farmer?
No, grandfather.
I'm
See,
sorry.
Grandfather came, they sold out in New York. And came down here, and his brother owned what was known at that time as Belmont Plantation, and that's over where Pine Steak is. Mm-hmm. Pine Steak is the first Anglican church in Orange County.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about your parents.
My parents?
Yeah.
Well, they were good parents. They were excellent people. My father's family came from Culpeper, and they settled down there at what is Mugler's, the service station, you know, down at what's the name of it, Ray? Down the way by Oshers and going out of town on the right, service station. Before you get to the airport on the right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that was named Mugler's, and that's where they were raised. And unfortunately, I knew very little about my father's family. His father separated from his mother, and I don't know what happened there, but it was I think it was 8 of them, 4 boys, and they did well. They were hard workers. And then my mother, of course, they lived at Rhodesville, and they were good, frugal people. And a nickel was a nickel. And you know, and Rhodesville at that time when I was growing up was one store, one shoemaker. We had a shoemaker, Cooper's, right downside the road, John Cooper, and one church. That was it. So what do you do on Sunday Saturday? You get on a bicycle and you just ride, or else you try to find a baseball that didn't have a split in it. And, you know, so that was country life.
So that's where you grew up, was Rhodesville?
That's where I grew up, in Rhodesville. Yeah.
Pardon me.
Born on Bird Street next to Dr. Hankins. He delivered me. Yeah, it's been good. I could have gone elsewhere, but we raised 2 children here. We bought homes here, and I wouldn't trade it. But things, as you know, or as you don't know maybe, things were different. And I can't say that they were better, but they were good times. Compared to some things happening today, it was good times. Mm-hmm. And the county's been that way, and the town's been that way. So if you're displeased with either one, feel like my grandmother one time told my aunt, who was complaining, she was from Pittsburgh, she was there just for a weekend or something, she was complaining. Grandma said, "Let me tell you something, Mabel, the same road that brought you here will take you back." So, you know, if you're not pleased, find something different. Yeah. If you're not pleased with church, Ray, find you another church. Yeah.
So, but when did you move to the town of Orange? At what age were you?
I joined the Baptist church at 15, and that's when my grandfather and grandmother, they were of age, and so at 15 we built a house down on Route 20, right below the school. Well, it's a line of houses, school, a bus garage, you know. And we built a house down there, and my mother worked for C&P Telephone Company for 35 years. And so we sold that house, came to town, and went over to Holiday Brothers and contracted to build another house. But in the meantime, we bought one from Gora Waugh, who was in the furniture business, and we kept that until the house on top of the hill was finished, and the house, 2-story brick house, was standpipe sets up there, you know, and
So you were a teenager?
I was a teenager.
When you moved to the town of Orange?
Right. Actually, I left the town of Orange at a young age and went to the country. And I was raised on a farm until I came back to Orange when I was 15. Well, maybe a year before that, 15. I know it was 15 because I joined the Orange Baptist Church when I was 15. And you know, being here, joined the Boy Scouts, and in school played baseball and basketball because they had no football team. So just growing up, you know, we had friends all up and down the street. We lived up on Marshall Heights, and these are things I did. You won't believe this, Phil. I climbed the standpipe twice, both times at night. It was crazy. The second time on my way down, a boy named Hershey Thompson, Thompson's Meat Market here years ago, he turned the corner there and he had a spotlight like police used to have, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he cut that thing up there and hit me. And I thought to myself, if he tells my daddy, if he knows who it is and tells my daddy, that's going to be the end of me. But
I know you were in the Boy Scout troop when you were a teenager. What are some things that the Boy Scout troop used to do to help the war effort during World War II?
well, we had metal drives, both at least, and paper drives, at least once a month, and people contributed to it.
Pardon me.
Awful lot, and I just remember some of the things that I thought people contributed. They don't want to get rid of those things, do they? And then I thought, well, yeah, yes they do. We got rid of the cannon in the courthouse yard. I see all these other courthouses still got their cannons, and ours are gone. But the Boy Scouts did a whole lot. They really did. I wish I had been there longer, but I wasn't. But we had good troops. We had good troops, and some of the men in their troop didn't make it through the war. So, matter of fact, that's where Grimes School came from. Was Breck Grimes. Miss Grimes started it, and it's blossomed, and it's been good for the community. So, but I tell you, when I was in the Boy Scouts, we had a good time. I mean, we had camping trips down at Billy Morton's at Lahore, and I remember we were down there one time in the river, in the big run rather, and you slide down into the water, but you grab hold of this vine, and that wasn't a vine to grab to. It was poison ivy. I know that we boys just got it all over them. Didn't have anything on but trunks, and grabbed that thing. It was all over the arms. It broke out.
So I'm assuming you went to elementary school in the Rhodesville area?
Unionville School.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you came to Orange, you went to Orange County High School?
Yeah, I went to, well, even before that, when I was living at Rhodesville, my parents said, we're going to move to Orange, and I said, well, I'm not going. I said, I'll run away before I go. So we moved, and finally I got, my parents got me a ride with three teachers in Orange that were going to Unionville. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then I guess I broke down and gave in, went on Orange schools. And so, but I didn't graduate from Orange. Was algebra. I failed algebra under Elmer Canyon. I think it was algebra, Trig 1. And so I couldn't graduate with the class, and the Army was after me. And I said, I want to graduate before going service. So the only place that would take me was Hargrave Military Academy at Chatham. So I went there for 1 year and got my diploma, and away the war went. They were good years, Phil.
Yeah.
Good years.
So after you graduated from Hargrave, you went into the military?
After I went, no, I didn't. I went to Mars Hill College in Western North Carolina, and Then, that was 2-year college. Then I switched over to Wake Forest. And so, then I went in service. That was before I was married.
But you had a college degree by that point.
I had 3 years of college and was drafted.
Oh. What were you majoring in?
History, government. Mostly history. So that was my prime, and it still is. History means a lot to me. And I think a lot of what the Historical Society is doing to recap what went on years later. And like I say, it's gone. As Craig said, it's if you're thinking of bulldozer, call me. So but just think of what we have already bulldozed, and what we have missed in the way of property and so on. But you know, he's trying to recap it, and there are others that are doing the same thing. But I think what Ray and the society is doing is of the utmost importance to Orange County. My hat's off to them. I wish I were younger and able to really participate in it. But to me, it's important. To other people may not be.
Yeah.
Everybody to his likes.
Ray Ezell is here with us, and he's talking. And one of the questions that you wanted to ask about. Do you remember your father working at the James Madison Hotel? Is that right?
No, that was my uncle.
Oh.
My uncle ran the James Madison Hotel for P.H. Faulkner, who built it. P.H. Faulkner was Johnny Faulkner's uncle. And my mother worked at the telephone company a lot at night. And my father would sit outside in the car because she had one door going up steps. She was afraid somebody would break in because there was only one operator on duty. So I would go up to the hotel and spend the night, lay on the sofa in the living room. And that brings up another thing that I guess I'm proud of it. I was born a Republican. I didn't have a chance to be anything but a Republican. But I did something that I've never seen anybody else that did it. Now there are those, so I can't claim. I went to Roosevelt's third inauguration. Third. You know how that came about. We were in the war, and they didn't want to change horses. Congress gave him the option of either quitting or going maybe. So I went down to Washington that morning, and cold as blue blazes, and I was standing in front of the Capitol. We had a big old policeman standing beside me, had an overcoat on that almost drug a gram, and he knew I was shaking like it. He went over and got me a little cup of coffee and brought it to me, you know. But that all enveloped by my being at the hotel, because the night clerk was from King George, and our families were close. And so he told me, he said, "Carl, would you like to go to Washington?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "It's inauguration." And I thought, well, that is, so what? Anyway, I went. I never told my grandfather that I went to the Democratic, but I did, and I can, to this day, I think Ford Motor Company gave every congressman a green Ford to drive down Constitution Avenue. I never will. Some things, you know, really stick in your mind. That was one of them.
How old were you when you went to the inauguration?
Probably 9. I know we went into Mayflower, got off the train picked us up in Orange, we got off of it at Union Station and went up to the Mayflower restaurant and had breakfast, and Wallace Berry was his name, who later served in World War II. While we ate, and Wallace put change out on the table, and he went up to the desk to pay the bill. Well, I took the money off the table, and I went up and I said, Wallace, you left this money. He said, no, I meant to leave it for the tip. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about tips. I didn't know anything about going into restaurants.
So, you went in the service after you.
I went in service in 1950 and went to Germany, served for 2 years, and wasn't bad. I was occupational force is what it was. The Russians were kicking the heels up over Berlin and other things, so they sent my division. Matter of fact, I was at Camp Pickett. They sent me to school. The whole division was filled up. They sent me off to school. I forgot now what it was, NCO school or something. And I was there 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I left that part of Pickett and went back to where I was. Well, when I got back, it wasn't a soul in Camp Pickett in the 43rd Division. And I said, where is everybody? Man, those boys had gone to Korea and boom, half of them were shot up and everything else. And I was saved, in a sense. But I really was. I really felt bad about that. Nobody let me know, and I had gone over to the Second Army to school, which Pickett was divided in 43rd and Second Army. Anyway, I missed it. I missed Korea, and had a lot of friends that didn't come back.
Were you married at this time? By this time?
No, I didn't get married till 54. That's 69 years, if you want to know.
Well, tell me the story about how you met Martha Jean.
Well, my wife had kin people here. The Barry lives in the Hatcher house. The Hatcher house has a long story. It used to be a school back in the late 1800s. Hatcher, Hillary Hatcher, was the man that established Falk Union Military Academy. He was a teacher. Then one of his sons was a teacher there at what we call Hillary now. And so in the process of the Hatchers and the Lonigans, they had relatives in Manassas, and one day they brought this young lady up there, and that was it. I didn't have a chance. So it stuck 69 years. Yeah.
And how many kids?
2 boys, Barry and Craig. Yeah. But of course, speaking of Hillary, then my wife's mother bought it, and husband. They bought it from the survivors, and then she had to go into a nursing home, and he had died, and well, before she went in the nursing home, she knew she couldn't take care of it. 28 acres in town. County and town, see?
Wow.
And so she told me, Gene, I'm going to give the place to you all. And I thought to myself, you ain't giving that place to me. Grass to be mowed, but nice place. And Barry has really he and his wife have really done an excellent job. They just expanded it and put in a swimming pool, and the house is. I believe Barry has redone the whole inside of the house. Really and truly, it's great.
It's still 28 acres?
28 acres. Now, he just sold or gave to his son, Whitney, 7 acres. So, but it's still 28 acres there,
Wow.
the way you cut it.
Right, right.
So,
right.
but anyway, the girl, his daughter, I guess she'll get the rest of it. But the thing about it is, it's really nobody. It's nobody that I know that Whitney would be the only one to take it over. But I don't know. I don't know what'll happen to it. But as it is now, it's a nice place.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
What was your first job?
My first job at 13, I believe, at 13 or 14, in fact, I pulled out my Social Security card in my pocket the other day, was at the Sunny South store, Railroad Avenue. We worked there. I worked there with Steve Matthews. Of course, we ran together, and we come in and have school on Friday. Sometimes we'd stop over the pool room, and if his daddy thought we were over there, we would hide. And he would sit there with Coca-Cola till we had to show. So we worked there Friday and Saturday, and those days, store stayed open till 10, 11 o'clock. Sparks stayed open late. My father would meet his friends up at Sparks, and of course a few fights on Main Street. A lot of fights down on Railroad Avenue. But I worked at Sunny South, I don't know, a long time, 3 or 4 or 5 years until, but Ms. Matthews were good people. In fact, it's a lady here that is a cousin of Ms. Matthews, and I told her one day that she gave me my first job, Dora Lee Matthews. Nice lady.
Now, the Orange Review was right there on Chapman Street, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was on Chapman. Chapman. Backed up to the Sunny South and those buildings back in there. Robert's Garage, Robert's Restaurant, Laura's Hatchery, Fink's Jewelers, Fink's 5 and 10, Herbert Lindsay, Railway Express. That's where they turned all the pigeons out. Pigeons would come in on a train, and they put it on one of the railroad cars there on the street. And at a certain time, time in Washington or wherever, time in Orange, they'd open the gates and the pigeons would take off flying,
Homing pigeons.
Homing pigeons.
Racing pigeons.
Yeah, racing pigeons. And that kept up until when I was on council, we got tired of people complaining about pigeons all over everywhere. They were in barns and, drop-ins and that type of thing, up on the bank, up on the church. In fact, we got some pigeons in their belfry one time, and they had lice. And the lice got down on the right-hand side of the inside. And people were jumping, and somebody said to me, I believe they got it. I said, no.
They got the Holy Spirit.
They ain't got nothing because the sermon wasn't that good.
Talk about Alan Miller like that.
But anyway, we eventually stopped that. I don't know where but it was.
Were those the pigeons that didn't fly home?
They stayed, and they raised.
They call them flying rats.
That's right. But anyway, that was it. And that pigeon thing didn't stop, I don't believe, till I left council. I'm not sure what time, but It could be a mess.
Well, the reason I asked about the Orange Review is because you had a question about the old editor of the Orange Review, or the Orange Observer, there on your sheet.
Yeah, Bertha Gray Robinson, who was the female editor of the Orange Observer. What do you remember about her?
Oh, if I look back on it, it's like a recluse, the way she dressed and whatever. But I just remember her coming to the hotel, and I ate up at the hotel a lot, my uncle and aunt. She would be there every night for soup, same seat, same table, same window. But other than that, she was just known as Miss Bertha. And Miss Bertha was the editor of the paper. And then along came, I believe, John Robinson. Or before. No,
Probably.
after. Which?
Probably before, because that was her father, I believe.
That's right. But she was a topic. I mean, good person as far as I know, but kept to herself. But her dress was an old-fashioned dress, you know. But Miss Bertha was all right. She edited that paper for a right good while.
Uh-huh.
Sure enough did.
So, after the military, you came back to Orange, and
I came back. I was discharged. Well, it wasn't. It was a temporary discharge in Augsburg, Germany, and to come home. And I got to Rhine-Main Airport, and I thought I'd catch a ride. And this was one of the scary parts of my life. I thought I'd catch a ride with a Metz coming over to Germany, heading home. Well, I did. They said, sure, we'll take you. And that was my longest hitchhiking job, journey. So anyway, we left there. And I wound up in Portugal. I never knew why I landed in Portugal. But from Portugal, we went back to Paris, and they said, we've got an emergency. The de-ice is out. So we landed in Paris and had that fixed. And we left there, heading home. And we got out over the Atlantic, and on the intercom said, folks, tighten your seatbelts. We got an emergency. We've lost an engine. I thought I never will get back to Orange. But and if you ever was on the Azores, it's like dropping a pebble in a bathtub from the air. You know, of course it was big enough. It's a city really now. A big rock. That's all it is. But anyway, we landed there, and I think we stayed there 2 or 3 days and got a new engine and took off. And I never will forget the words that really almost finished me. We got out, the intercom came on, and the pilot says, we have reached the point of no return. Oh, God, I never will see Orange County. But you know, prior to that, when I went overseas, I was going up through the North Sea, icebergs. You couldn't cut the fog with a knife. And all of a sudden, there I was about 3 stories down, and it felt like we were on the rocks. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? No rocks over here. And this Argentine liner was coming out of Bremerhaven, right smack across our path. And rough seas, you know. When we went up, we sliced right down through that ship. and hung there, just like that, you know. Well, we had to, of course, lock off all the doors, the airtight doors, watertight doors down below. But the hole in that airship was big enough to drive a school bus in. But it broke loose. We broke loose, and finally, the fog lifted just enough that we could see what had happened. And so then we stopped. The ship came parallel to us, and they dropped lifeboats, and we dropped lifeboats, and the davits. If you know anything about the davits, they haven't been tended to. When you drop a lifeboat, it hangs instead of doing this. So it hit the water, so we had to shoot those up, sink them, and I never did find how many. I do know that we had rope ladders, and I can remember this one lady coming up that rope ladder with nothing on but a fur coat, nothing. But so we sat there and watched that ship, and it would sink a little bit, you know, and finally, as the movies showed, and the movies are right too, it just slid right on down, right on down. So. But we made it back in. The German Navy came out and hooked on to us and took us into Bremerhaven, and we debarked there. And but that same ship, when it left Bremerhaven coming back to the States, hit a buoy, and they had repaired the front of the ship, you know, just temporarily. And they hit a buoy, lighthouse buoy, and of course, and I think the captain had a heart attack after that and beard like you should. It was an experience, but I tell you, between the two things, I wasn't too sure. I always remember it was one of the ladies at the telephone office that sent me a Christmas cake. Well, when we had that wreck out there with duffel bags floating, I reckon that's where my cake went. I never got it.
So this incident outside of Bremerhaven happened on your way over to Germany?
Yeah.
And then the incident with the airplane was coming back. They got you coming and going.
I know. When I got back to Westover Field, I went in the office and I said, "Have y'all got a plane that'll take me south?" And they said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Richmond, Virginia." They said, "Well, we can take you to Alabama." I said, "No, I don't want to go to Alabama." So this boy was with me, and I said, "Bill," I said, "let's hit the road." So we left Westover Field thumbing and got all the way to Washington in no time, really. Truckers, man, I'm telling you, they would come down at 80 miles an hour, and I thought, oh me. And so finally I got in Washington, I caught a train. I said, enough of this foolishness. And then got into Orange. And, but yeah, it was good, but those things would shake you up a little bit, but it's been a whole lot worse than that for people than me, but I was young and I thought, I'll never make it. So,
and you've pretty much been in Orange ever since. Is that correct?
I came back and my father had a terrible accident, and he was in a university and in a big cast and all, and I knew that I couldn't leave home. So I was at home and helping my mother with him, and Malcolm McIntosh called me and said, "Carter, you wouldn't mind working a few hours. I know you're at home. Would you work 2 or 3 hours in the morning and help us out?" I thought about it and I said, "Yeah, well, why not?" So it lasted 40 years.
Is that the post office?
At the post office, yeah. I was there long enough that you read a point of no return, as I've said, you know, in time, longevity. But I had some opportunities that I could have done. I had one opportunity to go to West Virginia with the mines, with one of the men that owned the mines, and then a couple more places. But I'd gotten in love then, and that is a big deterrent to. But it has really been good. I'll tell you, I wouldn't have traded for anything. I really wouldn't. People say you're crazy. Well, look at all the places you could go. And I said, I've already been there. I'm back here now. So it's been good. Yep.
When did you get involved with town politics and government?
Episcopal preacher came to me and said, Carter, you've got to run for council. I said, I do. He had a reason. And he told me what the reason was. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. So I got the boys, they were just little fellas in. I had been to a Lions convention in Roanoke, and as in a convention, you see signs laying around after it's all over. They had these buttons about this big around. So it hit me. I said, I'm going to get some of those buttons. So I just picked them up, brought them back to Orange. Donahue's painted them and stenciled them. Jacobs. What is that? I've got two left now. Jacobs Council. And I pinned one on each one of the boys. I said, all right, y'all start out right here, Landon Lane. So one thing led to another, and I actually felt like I would not lose. I belonged to the fire company. I belonged to the Lions Club. I belonged to the Baptist Church. I said, between those three, I ain't gonna lose. And so I kept on running for 18 years and never had any. No, I told one of the lady, I asked this lady downstairs, the black lady, I said, where do you live? She said, I bought Marcel Coleman's house. I said, you didn't. She said, I certainly did. I said, well, I'll tell you one thing. Marcel was on council, and she was determined that she was going to beat me one time. I wasn't going to lose a seat, because it was three seats open. She had these cards printed up and had a number on them. That's when we had the old machines, big old machines, and they numbered on there. And I was working the polls. And these people kept coming in there with these green cards. Miss Jacobs, where is this number? Well, what Marcel had done, she had handed those cards to all her people. And Simon, her husband, who ran a taxi, he was bringing them to the poll. Marcel beat me by 3 votes. I said, Marcel, you cheated. I said, it takes 5 people to run the council. Ha 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 ha, Kiara, I beat you, didn't I? But Marcel I always liked Marcel Coleman. The last time I saw her was here. I knocked on her door one morning about 10 o'clock and knocked again and come in. And I walked in there and Marcel was still in bed. I said, Marcel, what are you doing in bed at 10 o'clock? I get up when I want to. I thought, well, that's a good reason. She said, sit down here, Carter, on the bed and let's talk. So I did. And the last time I saw Marcel. Except one time we were at a convention in Richmond, Municipal League meeting, and we came out of a restaurant. Ted was mayor, and I don't know, I guess 5 of us in his van, Marcel was the first one, and she went to step up to get in the back, and Ted said, Marcel, you don't have to do that anymore. So,
Now, were you postmaster?
no, I turned that down. I'm kind of like Craig was when he, down there in the mountains, he's at college, he said, I can see 7 trout streams from my window. And I would think being postmaster would just clamp down on me. I couldn't fish, I couldn't do this. So I didn't.
Right.
But I know one time, the first time they offered it to me, is when the administration changes, that's when the Republicans took over. And I know one night I met down at La Jolla with 5 Republicans, and they wanted me to do it. And I said, no. I said, this man right here with me hired me. That was Tom Lanigan. He was assistant postmaster. He had hired me. And I said, no, this man deserves it, not me. So I didn't take it. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
Oh.
Did a lot of fishing and hunting. I wouldn't have done ordinarily.
Yeah. So what are some of what's it like being on a town council of a town like Orange? What is the town of Orange like?
At the time I was there, things were smooth. We had a good council. In fact, all the time that I was on, we'd lose a man or two sometimes, but we pick up women on the council, which was good, and it ought to be that way on the supervisors too. That's my opinion. It's just everything ran smoothly. We actually were trying to catch up. We had a water system, a water plant, sewer plant, that had fallen in a rage, and so, but we didn't have a drug problem, and things were just smooth. And I enjoyed it. I tell you the truth, even on my lunch hour, I'd go and see where the men were digging. I enjoyed seeing it, and I had a good relationship with the men, black and white, and I appreciate that. I don't know. It that kind of gave me a foothold that I didn't have in town, and the men I served with and ladies, they took things to heart, Mm-hmm. Things you got to watch it though, you got. I now that I'm on the outside, I'm like the old cow that the grass is green on the other side. I can say what I want, but you've got to watch not only the town council, the board of supervisors, and school board. They're the 3 things that can go array. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, an advocate of mine is that's Abigail. Well, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, and the Republicans, they don't come out really against her, but she knows what's going on, and she takes the counties to heart. And it seems like to me every time somebody in Orange County wants her, she's there. Mm-hmm. So that means a whole lot to me.
I remember when I spoke to you last summer during that Memories and Visions, where you told me the story about the climbing the tower and all that. So I've already got. But I remember you telling me, and I wish I put this in the documentary. You pointed out that one of the great advantages that this town has is that it has water.
Oh goodness! Oh goodness! Yes.
And could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well. We've always had that Rapidan River. We've always drawn water out of that Rapidan. And it has been a lifesaver to the town because we didn't have to dig wells. We didn't have to build lakes or anything of that nature. So anybody would love to have it, you know. But that's another thing. You have to be careful of who is abusing it upstream, you know. And people downstream from us have to worry about whether we're abusing it or not. So it's and then too, when RSA got involved in it, um, they were they were serving water to people that did not have it, and we had it, and so they bought it from us. Gordonsville the same way, and they pay a little more because there's a middleman, and but it's been a lifesaver. I often wonder how in the world that place over there out of Gordonsville, Lions Crossroads, how many wells do they have to serve all of those all of those businesses? It is, I don't understand. But anyway, we're built around that Rapidan River, and we'll always will be. We've had some problems with it. When it drops low, you know, I know the last time it dropped low, our pumps were out of the water, and so we were pumping mud, and so we had to build a little dam. Well, you don't build a dam, or you can build it just so much, or the engineers are on you. But we did raise it a little bit, and it backed that water up so the pumps worked. But since then, we haven't had any trouble. But we built that lake up there, which will suffice if the water is really low. You know, somebody brought it to my mind the other day, maybe yesterday. I went with, this I enjoyed. I went with the ecology class from the high school. We started out to go to the cranberry bog, which is not, it's only a few cranberry bogs on the east shore, on the eastern coast. So we went to, we did that. We went to Pearl Buck's place, and we took two teachers with us, and we had really good experiences with the kids in the ecology club. I'm sorry that they had that greenhouse down there, and the government furnished the greenhouse, you know, in the first couple of years they were raising plants, and they said no. Then they let it go, and they started throwing rocks at the glass, and they finally broke it, took it down. Nelson County still has theirs. Sure enough. So it's been a lot of experiences. I tell you the honest truth, I've told Craig the other day, I said, Craig, you know, that I do believe the best times of my life was on a trout stream. It just was something. And I've done a lot of it, and there's nothing like it. You can get things down there, you know, and it's just so good. But they one of the blessings of being able to do it, and having time off to do it. So.
Anything more, Ray?
Couple houses that used to be standing in Orange, kind of in the downtown area. One of them was the Perry House. Other one was Mamie Lee House. What do you remember about those buildings?
Plenty. Next to the Perry House, prior to that, was the oldest house in Orange. And it was torn down, like a lot of things. But the Perry family particularly Miss Perry was close to my mother. Of course, she and mother belonged to Baptist church, and mother would take Miss Perry to the church. We had prayer meeting on Wednesday night. Miss Perry, be about 85, 90 years old, she'd be down there plucking that piano. Dr. Perry, I really and truly never knew him because he died. He was a male, and I've been told, and I do not know it, I've never questioned Miss Perry about it. I'm told that he lost the election, and that's why he died, but I don't know that to be a fact. Anyway, the house was there, and so the council said, we need some parking on East Main. So I went to the girls. One of them was in Seattle, Washington, and the other one was in Alexandria. And the house was in disrepair. So I asked them about selling it. And they said, Carter, yeah, we will. We're not living in Orange anymore. So I said, okay, what do you consider a fair price? And they said, I believe, they said 42,000. Well, that doesn't sound reasonable now. But anyway, so I went back to council and I said, we can get it if council passes it. So they did. And so then we got Alexandra to tear it down. Well, years later, Ray, there's a couple came in church and they sat on the pew in back of us. And for some reason we made contact, and they were Perry's out of Maryland. And she wanted to know where that stained glass was. Mm-hmm. Well, somebody had shot it out with BBs. It was on the first landing, a nice round stained glass. Well, so I got some stuff out of the house, and then right across was Miss Mamie Lee. Her name was Miriam Madison Lee, and reputed to be kin both to Lee and Madison. I went to the sale, and I remember there was a painted picture like this of General Lee. It was put up for auction, and this is when $1 was $1, and that thing brought $1,000. And I know where it went. I know who bought it, and I'm assuming he's dead now. But anyway, Miss Mamie, you believe it or not, lived there with Wilkerson, Miss Wilkerson. I can't think of the name now. One of them graduated from Bryn Mawr, and the other one from Vassar. You would never believe it. But I have an obituary, I had an obituary, I can still get an obituary, where Miss Mamie went to the graduation of Miss Wilkerson in Pennsylvania. So that's authentic. Well, anyway, after the sale was over, and it was the worst sale I ever saw, the auctioneers and the administrator, they didn't want to clean up anything. They left the house just terrible. So I went to Joe Myers and I said, Joe, he was administrator. He was at the bank. I said, I'd like to go in there and see what I could get in the way of papers and everything. So they just said, so I did. I got National Geographic all the way back to 1918, and I got a brass, half of a brass bed well, I say half one, it's a 3/4 bed, and I had it cut down to a single. And they had a lot of glass in the basement. I didn't take time to. But upstairs with all of these newspapers, I did get a VJ, Victory over Japan. I did get one of those. And, I don't know, I got a lot of other stuff that they had just left. And if we had had a historical society then, I could have filled it up. Just here recently, I called Saxton, Mike Saxton. Mm-hmm. I said, Mike, where are the graves for Miss Mamie Lee and Miss Wilkerson? And he said, wait just a minute. So he had a map, and he told me they were side by side. I never figured out whether they were sisters or what. It's things like that I stay awake at night wondering why I didn't. And everybody's that way, I'm sure. But anyway, that's my experience with Miss Mamie Lee, and that was a good, solid house, and it had a dumbwaiter on the back, that was a good piece of property. It went from 7-Eleven all the way down to Altman, and it was a good piece of property. And then too, Miss Mamie, she owned a Lee farm that we bought when I was on council. I think that's right. The Lee farm is now, we didn't have an industrial park, so the town had Noel, who was the town manager, and a good one at that. We bought it. We bought the farm from her, and then Richard Coleman went right in there, and they took over. And then Richard Coleman, in their good graces, they gave the fair, the county fair, the property. But we couldn't get an access road. This is politics. We couldn't get an access road into the. So I was at another municipal league meeting and I ran up on my cousin who worked for the Asphalt Institute of America. And we were standing there in that motel, and I was looking at it over from Chain Bridge and all of these traffic things. And I said, this fella, what makes us country people so furious? And we can't get a little old piece of macadam to go into an industrial park. He said, where is that? And I said, it's in Orange County. He said, why can't you get it? I said, well, nobody will approve it. It wasn't long before that thing was put in. So the wheel that squeaks gets grease. But if it hadn't been for my cousin, and they were good friends, one worked for the Asphalt Institute, as I said, and the other one worked for the state of Virginia. So that's just a few little things, Phil, that had come my way time to time. I was born right across the street from Miss Mamie, from the house you're talking about. Right straight across the house. This house is still there. It belongs to a surveyor now. Mm. We lived, the Tomlinsons lived
That's right.
downstairs. And I was born upstairs by Dr. Hankins, who the property joined. And I told somebody one time, he came over and he says, Ethel, you gonna have a little girl. And I said, well, he was wrong, and maybe that's why I'm still wearing diapers. But he was the one, and of course, him, and that's what was known as the Paul Grimes house.
Hmm.
Next to it is that vacant lot.
Mm-hmm.
That was Ms. Hill. Next to it was Chink Butler's house, and on the corner was Granny Rowe Roberts, Baptist Church. Sat there all day long with that Bible in her lap, reading it. Nice person. So then Sherman bought it, and there's the law office.
Yeah.
And across the street used to be Conoco Gas. And then Uncle Willis, man that hauled the garbage from the trains.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what was next to his house. Dennis bought that house. Willis's house, Uncle Willis' house. He had hogs, and you couldn't put hogs in town now, against the law. I've been fortunate. I'm telling you, my wife and I were talking about it the other day. We've been blessed with, some people said, well, what, they count wealth as money, but you got jobs, you got health, there's lots of things that you can count as wealth, and friends in particular. And that's been the biggest thing that I have found in my life in Orange is friends. So that's all I know. Y'all don't want to know anything else. You better hurry up. I'm reminded, not doctor, but Archie Roche lived up around the corner from where we was right diagonally across from the standpipe. He had a tumor in his mouth. He went to university, and after the doctor removed it, he said, Mr. Rose, he said, it's a possibility that this thing is going to come back. And Mr. Rose, he had a dry wit with him. He said, well, doctor, at my age, you better hurry up.
I got one last thing I want you to talk about.
What?
What advice would you give the younger generation?
Oh, God. You know, the first thing that comes in my mind is stay out of trouble. And it's not hard to do. But there is so much going on that detracts from young people today. And I think the thing that I cherish most is stay with education. Stay with it. And we've gotten to the point that there's so many things that are detracting from education. You know, television, and it's clicking, and that drives me up the wall. You invite them to your house to have meals, and they bring the friggin' thing to them. One man I know, Bill Bradley. Bill Bradley said, if you come to my house, you leave those things on the steps. And
He wasn't joking, neither.
he wasn't joking. But Phil, it's out there for young people if they want it. And if they don't want it, then they go wind up on the wrong side of the road. And as Bible says, the road is straight and narrow. And so you have to, and it's hard on children today, but I find that the children that have parents that have a background of some type of education are going to make it. But the poor ones that don't have it, that generation didn't get what this generation can get if they want it. But it's so often that they, and it's a shame because children suffer from it. But education is the key to it, I believe. I think it's a key to what's going on today. It's key to the world. That's my speech for the day.